It's a huge task. All year long,
A lot.
A monumental effort.
It takes a lot of dedication from the volunteers because most of the people who come out here and do this don't do it for pay, they do it because they enjoy the event.
To host this, one, you have to have a tremendous board of directors. They have to be focused on what this event is all about. Then you have to have a tremendous volunteer base. But all of these volunteers are very dedicated, so that's part of hosting this whole thing.
Oh, it's a huge task. During the year, the day-to-day operations, there's probably a dozen people that work full-time year-round at the air races. I mentioned I volunteer one day a week prior to, and then getting close to the races, I go to every day. But I'm just a volunteer, so it takes tons and tons of volunteers. There's almost 200 pylon judges to man all the different pylons, have them up ready and be in position to call the cuts if there's any cuts for pilots and stuff.
It's a year-long operation. Folks like John Thurman, who just spoke, are volunteers like we all are, and he works all year long working on the next year's races, which includes the PRS for the pilots and others that want to participate during the PRS week. And then for race week, there's probably 2,000 people at least.
Wow, so what it takes to put on the Reno Air Races is a monumental effort on the part of many people. We have over 1,000 volunteers that come out that are working well in advance of the air races in order to help put it on. There's so many factors. To try to answer that in a breath is almost impossible, but you have so many different organizations and committees within the organization that put that on. It certainly requires funding, and we're very grateful to all of our sponsors. Certainly Steel is our presenting sponsor, our title sponsor for the National Championship Air Races. Crash, Fire, and Rescue, all of the city ordinances that are taken into account when we have to put something on like that have to be waived, for certain functions of the air races. So it's a local, city, and state level. There's a federal level involved with the FAA. Of course, we have the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. That's our one of our largest supporters.
Prior to the races or prior to PRS, it's a matter of setup. So you empty a normal aircraft storage hangar and turn it into a sport and biplane and formula storage race hangar. And then you set up facilities to accommodate that. So we have to set up some temporary fencing for crowd control. We have 3 pylons we put up, we actually erect. And one of those is also the home pylon, which is a big crane derrick that is laid down sideways when it's not in use, and then bring out a big crane and stand it up and wire it and get the lights and the flags on it, and we're ready to go racing.
Well, I'm usually up at about 3 a.m. so that I can be out here by no later than 6:30.
The day depends. Normally start early in the morning. It gets really hot out here instead, so you want to try and do as much as you can in the early parts of the day before you get out on that asphalt, and temperatures are over 110 degrees off of the black heat getting out there. So try to do as much of that, and it just depends. There's days you could literally spend all day out in the desert playing with pylons, putting them up, putting them down, or digging holes, relocating them because the poles are rotted. Or there's days where thankfully you get to be inside and you're painting equipment and getting equipment ready to go. So it really just depends on what point of the season we're at. But it is a full process from sun up to sundown some days out here.
Well, during Pylon Racing School, a week out here is moments of intensity coupled with, in some cases, some waiting periods where you're waiting for the next thing to happen, and then it's pretty intense again. And the preparation for all of that is very intense. We've got not a huge staff that actually come together to help put this on, and they're the champions of this thing, because really without the staff and volunteers, particularly the volunteers, this thing wouldn't come together.
Race week becomes much more intense from PRS?
So a typical day during race week, we scatter out onto the race course to the respective positions and duties that we all have. So there's not a typical day in my world. Others out here that are assigned to a specific pylon have a much more regular schedule as far as what they're going to do and when they're going to do it during the day. But my day is just whatever's needed at the moment. So
Typical day during race week in September, I'll be at the Sport 5 pylon typically 15 to 20 minutes before any of the sport races.
Everything is orchestrated from home pylon, which is where I'm basically based. As each particular race or event unfolds, what we do is we call for cuts after the event, and we go in pylon sequence for that particular course. Everything is being recorded at each pylon, so if a cut does occur, then it's recorded on a specific form that we use. Once we have finished with our cadence of calling for cuts, then home pylon, whoever is actually working the radio and working the books, will confirm back to that particular pylon or pylons the race number, what lap he cut, and the pylon that he cut. Then we transmit that information to the timers. They mark it, they regurgitate it back to us, and then we then contact scoring and give her that information. And then at that point, she confirms back to us. Then we wait for contest committee to give us a green or red light. So in other words, if everything looks good to the contest committee, they'll come back and say clean race or clean qual or whatever it happens to be. We'll regurgitate that back to them. That way everybody's on the exact same page. So it's actually a very busy day.
During race week, once the races start, it's a lot of the preparation is already completed. So then you're just satisfying or solving the problems of the day.
During race week, it's crazy. It's just busy, and it's not so much that you have a laundry list of things to do during race week. It's more about those small little fires or the things that you have to do to maintain the certificate with the FAA. Hey, we have to put up a show line out here because we've got cars coming out there.
As soon as you walk in, somebody has a new request to divert you. I've got a truck that needs fuel, I've got a gate that won't open, I've got something parked in the wrong spot. It's constant. Down to the toilet's out of toilet paper. So it's a little of everything.